the 50. It's especially good with actors with very low voices. It comes through. Whereas, and it also has a decent amount of rejection. I mean, it's forgiving within a certain area, but it has enough rejection from where it is that it's a great interior mic. And unlike the Sheps, it's not really subject to a whole bunch of problems with humidity or with cold or with heat. So, it's just very much a workhorse mic.
I'll add that the 50s have a lot of gain, and that's something that's usually very attractive to me.
Oh yeah.
When going indoors and people tend to lower their volumes, gain is huge. But it has a lot of gain.
Yeah, I guess for me too, I like the 50 because it sounds flattering on the most number of people. And I've compared it with other microphones in like the DPA 4017, which I thought the DPA was extremely clean sounding. But the thing that struck me about the DPA in comparison was that the DPA definitely sounds more real and more flat, and people sound like what they sound like through a DPA, which is great. If I were shooting a heavy duty kind of documentary thing where I really wanted to hear what they sound like in verbatim, then the DPA is probably what I would go with. But in narrative storytelling, the 50, it gives the flattering side of that person's voice. Somebody who sounds mousy, I can make them sound a little bigger, and somebody who's boomy, it's got enough headroom to control that and to bring it in, so I can bring it into where it needs to be. Because eventually, when all of our dialogue goes to post, it all gets squashed into a dynamic range. But like I said, the DPA for realism, for what they sound like, and the 50 for something that makes them sound flattering.
Chris, you're exactly right. And that's the reason that when I listen to the DPAs, I'm kind of like, yeah, well, this sounds okay. I mean, it sounds flat. Whereas the 50 enhances everything to the point where if you're shooting narrative, I want my villains to sound like villains, and I want my heroes to sound like heroes. So it just seems to work really well.
A couple of the advantages of the 50 are, one, that the pickup pattern is fairly wide. So if you have actors close together and they're overlapping, they all tend to sound pretty good on that microphone. Nobody really sounds off axis as long as they're close enough together. Two, being as short as it is and being a boom operator, if you're working in a location with a ceiling, a lot of times you might be able to get a 50 in where you can't get a CMIT 5U in or something like that over the top of the frame.
I have to say the new mini Sheps are really good for that. The smaller Sheps microphones, the mini CMITs it's really cool to get something that directional and that compact a space. And I got to visit their factory last year. I think it was September or October, and really got to see how they took that long circuit board that was in the regular CMIT and how they squashed it down. It's literally, they took certain parts of it, and the circuit board, instead of being long and narrow, is now it's now circular discs of circuit boards that are connected by ribbon cable up and over and up and over. And so they took this long, narrow circuit board, which is pretty much the same circuit board, and they broke it up into 3 or 4 circles and compact them together, and they're connected by ribbon cables inside the mic. And that's how they shortened it down. It was really interesting. They do it all in the same building there. And it was really, really cool to see how they put that together.
And the other thing I liked about the 50 as well, then when you're in a reflective room, like even a bathroom or something else, it doesn't pick up as much reflection and echo in the room. I tried other mics and they were much worse than the 50.
On that note, the 40 is a perfect match for the 50 and gets even less reverb. And I once I listened to that, I bought a second one, so I have 2 of those and 2 50s, and I go into reverby space, and it's like, oh, that great sensitivity, no noise floor, and the 50 characteristics without any rear lobe or very little reverb. It's quite amazing.
From a boom operator standpoint, it's also light, and it's super easy to swing.
And did anybody use the 8000 series of the Sennheiser?
Yeah, I like those. They're even lower profile, of course. That with the Minex, I have both. I have 250, two 8050s, 250s, 240s. But the 8050s are somewhere in between the 50 and the 40 as far as like if you put them in a reverberant space, a little more natural off axis. And you know, with the Minex vanilla mount, it's like not having a mic on your stick. It's so small, like it's smaller than a Sheps with a GVC. So getting through a doorway and stuff like that is wonderful and very resistant to RF and moisture, even more so than their older brothers and sisters.
When I did a tech scout for a feature that I was doing, they had a set that had very, very low ceilings. It was supposed to be a back room of a McDonald's. And I rented two 8050s just for that purpose, so that I wouldn't have to, you know, sacrifice using my 50s. And in exchange, I just used the 8050s in that situation. So.
All right, and the runner-up was the Sheps Colette series, which includes, you know, probably the other ones too. And I heard those microphones, they're great. There are some times when I didn't like it, they were too wide open for me. In cars, they were great, but I guess the size sometimes matters when you shoot it indoors. So they're great microphones as well. I don't know if you, Jeff, want to talk to them about it a little bit.
Well, I don't know. I guess I'm in the minority in terms of that microphone, but I also like to dispel some of the myths about it being, you know, unusable in moisture and, you know, problems in different temperatures and all. And I don't know whether I was just incredibly lucky, but using that microphone for close to 35 years on, you know, probably over 60 movies, I can count the number of times that I had a moisture problem or anything like that, you know, on less than one hand. I do know that it was very, very sensitive to atmospheric smoke. So if you were ever on a stage where they were smoking it in, that was death to the microphone. But you know, I did a you know, rain scenes in Last Samurai with the Sheps outside, you know, where the microphone was actually wet. Never had a problem. In terms of the sound, I think the reason why I stuck with it goes back to my original discovery of the Sheps microphone, and how different it was from all of the rest of the microphones that were in common usage, you know, like 415s, 815s, you know, very directional microphones. It was the first microphone that I used that had a very gentle pattern and was extremely forgiving on the sides. And Don Sufal just discovered that he could do things with that microphone that you couldn't possibly do with a directional microphone. Even like there were times when we ended up having to mic the back of somebody's head, and it sounded wonderful. So it was really a problem solver, and particularly in a scene where you have multiple people and there's no way you can, you know, you'd be really dead in the water if you were using a very directional microphone, trying to mic this person and then getting to the other person and then getting back to this person. Whereas Don could like float the microphone just over a group and get everyone sounding good and very even. We just really loved that sound. So over the years, we tried other microphones. Once everyone kind of got with the program of using less directional microphones, and I guess that's around the time that the 50 came in, and all that, we tried those, but we could never get them to perform the same way we did with the Sheps. So we just stuck with it. But I would say that the revelation came on the film Being There. We had already used the Sheps on a couple of other movies, but we were shooting in Washington, D.C. out in the streets at night. And we decided to do a scene with the 415, which we had been using on most movies, and do a couple of takes with the Sheps. There was a lot of traffic noise. There was a lot of, not favorable environments. But we went to dailies the next day, and it was absolutely night and day difference between the takes that we did with the 415 and the takes that we did with the Sheps. In terms of the way the background sounded, sure, the Sheps did grab more of the background. In other words, when a car went by, you really could hear that car. It was not reduced in level the same way the directional microphone did. But the fact that when a car went by, you could hear the car coming in, you could know that it's a Volkswagen. It could go by. It was so real that it made the dialogue more intelligible because the sound made sense. There wasn't that thing you get with directional microphones where a car goes by and it's shoo, 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 shoo. It's a sound which is not replicated in real life with your ears. Now, the downside is the Sheps is a really, really natural pickup and really natural sound. The actors sound the same as they do if you take the headphones off and stand next to them and listen to them. But that can be a real problem if you're in an environment, in a location where you don't want natural sound, because natural sound will be death for the scene, because they're asking you to shoot, an intimate scene in a 2-wall set that they built under the San Diego freeway. So it's, then you have to go to some other microphone, and we were not successful in using the Sheps in those situations. And I could go on and on about it, but I think that's about all I can say at the moment.
Jeff, so when you're talking about how something sounds natural when you're using the Sheps, whereas the cars are coming by and you hear the cars and you hear the full range of when the vehicle approaches versus when it drives away. I understand that. Have you ever noticed, and I know I notice this all the time when I'm watching TV and it's an episodic or it's something like that. You ever notice that you can tell when somebody's using the wireless mic instead of the boom because it sounds so sterile and there's not enough ambience other than the dialogue, and even the ambience that they feed in, that they fly in afterwards, there's something about it that just doesn't seem right. Whereas with the boom microphone, it seems very much natural as opposed to the wire.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely, but you have to already be committed to and love hearing the room or hearing the environment, but it necessitates that you get that environment under control. So like Don and I would have to be even more aggressive in terms of like getting the generator moved, solving the problems physically so that the set sounded.
So the natural ambience is what you want, and not the
when Don would preview a new microphone that we were trying out just to see whether maybe like the DPA 4017 could be an alternative to our Sheps or something like that, Don would put the headphones on and we bring up a mic, and Don wouldn't want to listen to anybody talking or anything. He would just want to listen to the ambience. He'd want to listen to how does that microphone buy the world around us. Then we start listening to voices. Then we start figuring out what can you do with the microphone. And we always went back to sticking with the Sheps.
Interestingly, I think that everyone's been chasing that thing from Sheps for years. It's lots of people figured out how to make great sounding microphones for what's right in front of them over the years, and that's been great. But it's the off-access response that everybody else has been chasing from Sheps that makes everything sound more natural. And the change from the original MKHs to the newer version to then the 8000 series and old DPAs, which were like basically measurement mics, to the newer ones. It's that off-access response where stuff's just quieter but still sounds correct when it's off-access has been sort of the trend in microphone development in the last 20 to 30 years.
Yeah. And that's a really great way, Jeff, the way you're characterizing the aspects of the microphone, it's a very good, relatable way to pose it. And it definitely makes sense to me, somebody who's not really a technical person. So I appreciate that description from you.
But, you know,
question for you.
Yes.
And do you know what they ended up using in post? Because I'm also sound mixer, and I think there's a lot of us that are post sound folks. And I do a lot of my sound mixing and then do my post. And I like Aaron was talking about, I will bring in boom to give the lav a more, like, you feel like you're in a room kind of feel. If I feel it's too isolated. Do you know what they ended up using in the final version? With did you know if they used a Sennheiser for the
people are going to think I'm being very, I don't know what the word is, but I would say 90% of the movies that I've done, they're using what we now call the mix track. Because first of all, for the first 30 years of my career or more, that's the only track they had. And that track.
You're talking to a girl who started on the Nagra, so I totally get that.
And that track, 80%, 80 or 90% of the time was one microphone doing the scene. So, you know, I'm a sound mixer, but, you know, people say, well, what were you mixing if you're only using one microphone? You know, weren't you, you know, I think that sort of natural, open boom mic sound is what ends up in the movie on, you know, the majority of movies that I did in my career. Because in the beginning, they didn't even have the choice of anything else because but I might do a scene with the boom mic and I might use some wireless and I might mix in a little bit of the boom to take the curse off the wireless being close. I would do something where somebody comes to a doorway and I get their line on a plant, but if I use just the plant, it would be way too close. The perspective would be what we call reverse perspective. So I would leave Don's mic open somewhere in the room and feather that out. And that's the track that they put in the movie. And nobody ever questioned about, well, you know, when they came to the door, the sound was just like too close and we had to widen it out because I had already done that. And if I had done it successfully, then that's the track they used.
I know what a lot of the sound dialogue editors are using these days, and I know some of these have been on our groups and whatnot, but they're using an alignment tool that will align the booms with the wires where they can mix in more of the boom so it doesn't sound so much like a wire. Even if the boom is 20 feet in the air, the dialogue editors are encouraging everyone to keep that boom in there and to work it. And they can do their magic in post-production with this alignment. Somebody might can help me on what that's exactly called, but anyway, but they can align the tracks. Yep.
And they can do what we try and do in production, but they can do it and they can make multiple passes till it works.
Yeah, they can make it much better sometimes than we get the chance to.
Because at least I will add that there are times when I've tried to widen something out and it really sounds terrible. I mean, you know, it just, it was not, and I think, you know, well, next take, I'm not going to try that. Or Don will say, you know, what the hell happened? You know, because it just didn't, when it all comes together, nobody even knows that that's how we did that particular shot. And a lot of that goes away when they're shooting multiple cameras and you're shooting, you know, you're having to do someone's close up at the same time you're doing the master and, you know, so that whole perspective thing kind of went out the window anyway. And I understand that in today's world of sound mixing, people can't be thinking about, well, how big was that shot and whether they sounded far enough away or were they a little too close, because, you know, you're just fighting to get something that someone can bear to listen to. You know, in post, they're going to go right to the ISOs and try and make a mess work. But I've just been fortunate enough that I haven't been on any of those movies, and then I retired.
And Jeff, good question. When you know that you can boom it and put the boom way far just to get out the room, are you using the same microphone that you would use for regular booming, or you switch to, let's say, the 815 or something longer to get a little bit more?
Yeah, no, I keep the same boom mic because I know that that boom mic is going to come into play eventually. I mean, I was just watching a scene in Almost Famous where it was one of the scenes with Seymour Philip Hoffman, and he was they were sitting at a table having a conversation, the two of them, and I had to put a planted Sheps on the table because it was a big wide shot. Okay, it's a slow push in. Okay, so I stayed on that plant until I got to the point where Don could be in the right place, and then it crossfaded to the boom mic, and it was a seamless crossfade. No one knows that the beginning of the shot was on the Sheps that was planted, and then it went to the boom. And obviously I went to the boom because you don't want to rely on a plant that's on a table that might get hit and might be not in the best position if one of the people at the table decides they're going to talk like this. So as soon as I could, when I knew listening to it, Don was in the right place, I brought Don up and made a crossfade to, and that would just be standard practice. So I used Don's mic in the beginning to widen out the plant, and then made a crossfade to, but that's the way we would do any scene. And again, when someone asks the question, well, in post, did they go to the plant ISO and then did they, and they then tried to feather, there weren't any ISOs, it was a mono track, my mix is what they had.
Oh, my question wasn't whether they used the ISO track. I was wondering if they used your Schweppes or if they were using the Sennheiser for the scenes in Being there with the cars.
Oh, no. Oh, definitely.
That's what I was wondering. If they,
oh, yeah. No, definitely the Shep, and the Sheps became our main microphone then.
Gotcha.
We said, we really, that sealed the deal. So.
And Jeff, you used, if I remember right, you used Sheps inside and outside the Colette series.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Correct. Yeah,
absolutely.
which is unusual. I never used them outside unless it was possibly for a plant mic or something.
Yeah, no, used it outside. But we did have to build shock mounts ourselves and windscreens, and it was really and then there were times when obviously it just didn't work well outdoors. We needed more reach. We needed a more directional microphone for whatever reason. And but we would always start out trying to do it with the Sheps inside or outside.
And anybody who hasn't seen Being There, if you're a sound mixer, that's pretty much required viewing. So go check it out. It's one of Jeff Wexler's early movies and great movies. And he actually got a card in the front title of it, in the front title sequence of it. It's really, really cool to see. And man, just some really great work from an outstanding era.
Thank you, Chris.
Sure, check it out.
It's also one of the few movies I got to work in post-production on. So I couldn't say that thing like they'll fix it in the mix because I was actually in the mix. And it was such a good education for me to really know firsthand what you can do with the tracks in post, so.
For sure, that's pretty cool. So do we go to the next? Do we go to lab mics, Sabi? What do we do?
No, we're gonna do the outdoor microphones. Yeah, just to make it a little bit more interesting. So here's a poll, you guys, and see. Ron, don't click anything that you don't know. So we're gonna have it running.
32 people, so we should see 32 people voted.
Right. So it's just about what you guys prefer or like for outdoors. Of course, it depends what you have in your arsenal, because even if I want to have.
Oh, I love it. Since I'm the host, I can't vote.
Yeah, me neither.
My mics aren't on there. 8060 and 8070.
Put it in the chat.
Hold on. Oh, well, then I have to read it again.
Sabi did these.
Sabi, that should be what our current choice. I mean.
Right. Yeah. I want to think to the 815 because I know that there are still people are using that. Yeah, I asked you, Chris, if I wanted to ask Chris Holland if I want to add more microphones. So you didn't say anything. So not just me. I could have changed it. I guess I should have, showed you earlier. I can add more, but then I have to cross the pole again. So
No, it's fine.
Yeah, I could have had probably the 60. Sennheiser 60 as well.
It's fine. I think we can talk about it regardless of what the.
Yeah, it says 20 of 29, so 68% of you have voted. We need a better vote turnout than we do here in America, please.
Can we mail it in?
Yeah, right.
No, you can't. You
No
can't.
post
There's no
office.
money for the post office anymore, so you can't do that.
Ripe with
But
fraud.
if we're gonna change that up, the end anyway. So,
Absentee, please.
21 of 29.
There we go. 72% have voted. Any more? Oops,
There we go.
75. Guys, it's exciting.
and I'm gonna have to make sure that it's all multiple answers, so not just one and you're done. But you can do multiple ones.
Can you guys tell us if it's one and done, or can you do multiple selections?
Oh, I just did one.
But can you hit another one? Can you choose two?
I think so.
Yeah,
I did on the first poll, yeah.
Selections, like the first
I
poll.
see a nod. Elisa is nodding. Yes.
Okay.
I missed it.
Because I know Justin was asking about the second, and it's up there. I figured maybe he.
Yeah,
just,
I would have checked two if I knew I could check two. I didn't.
I guess seven people don't want to vote. I'm vote shaming.
Who are we?
I
Let's call
just
them.
voted on the chat because my option wasn't up there.
They're independent. That's why they're not voting.
Yeah, Chris Harris, you're right. I forgot the DPA 4018. That's right. I knew there's something, but again, I asked you, Chris Holland. I sent you the pictures. If I'm missing something, so.
You did. I'm sure you did, and I said it looked pretty thorough.
I'm gonna vote for Kanye.
Oh dear, canceled. But back to what we were talking about before with off-axis response. The reason I went with the 8070, I was doing a movie last year that had a couple of scenes where the actors were me jumping in the water and stuff, so it was going to be boom only. And I didn't have a long mic yet. Aaron Siegel is a huge fan of having a long mic in his kit, and I listened to the MKH70, which was sort of the current lightweight long mic that exists. And then listen to 8070, and it's a lot heavier, but the off-X response is fantastic. So while it has incredible reach, it still makes things sound very natural compared to its older cousins. And that's what I went with. And also in the future, if I ever run hardlined again, you can do an AES version of a long mic, which is AES 42, which is no other long mic can do that.
And to answer,
what mic was that again?
The MKH 8070, the long Sennheiser.
and to answer Justin Rock's question, yes, the CS3E is on there, the Sanken.
Physically, how long a microphone is that, Chris?
It's actually a little bit longer than the MKH70, the classic one, and 816. It's just the newest generation of that line, but it takes the full number 7 Rycote Zeppelin, and Sonilla refuses to make Zeppelins for long microphones. I've asked.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so I'm going to end the poll. It's been 5 minutes. 6 didn't vote, so here we go.
And Chris, the 8070 you worked on, you did that for a water, because it was in a water, it was like a lake or something, right?
Yeah, that's correct. The actors were going to be jumping in off a pier, and we got it. It worked well. They did a couple lines and then jumped in, and then set a couple lines in the water and punched in for tights, and the 8070 was able to pull their lines out amidst the splashing and everything else, and we didn't have to put any lives in danger.
Wow,
Nobody likes the 82.
This is surprising results.
It's pretty interesting, right?
The Sheps and the Sanken right together.
They're tied, yeah.
I kind of expected something similar, but not tied. Although,
If I could have checked both, I would have checked the Sanken because I've used that a lot. But once we got the CMIT, we pretty much went over to that, and it didn't use the Sanken, except sometimes we'd use the Sanken as a second boom mic if we were into that.
All right. I had a Senken CS3. I heard the Simit before. So far, I'm very happy with the Senken. But sometimes I use the 50 outdoors as well if the frame allows it. But the Senken was a good addition. I liked it when sometimes I had, it has an awesome reach. Awesome reach. Some people complain there is a self noise. I never noticed it on my end. When I use it indoors as well as a second boom microphone next to the 50 as well, and it got pretty well. As long as they're both clean enough, they work pretty well. For me, the Senken, yeah, the reach was very good. The rejection was fine, all detailed. And for the price, it was, I think, 1,400 or something. I find that to be a very useful microphone. But of course, someone with the Simit can chime in. And as Jeff said, you guys switched to the Simit after the Senken.
Just for the sake of the stream, they can't see the poll or the results. So I just want to articulate for the live stream that there was a tie between the Sheps CMIT5U and the Senken CS3E for the top spot. Second place was the MKH 416 from Sennheiser. And then rounding out the pack, at least in our poll, was the MKH 70, the 815, and the Neumann KMR 82. But we'll go ahead and talk about the other mics that aren't in the poll, but just articulating that for the live stream since they can't see the screen.
Nice, Chris. Good idea.
Yeah.
I'll say that, oh, what happened?
Oh.
All right.
You can click on poll results at the top, at least on my version of Zoom. There's a little poll results thing and you click on it. It brings up the poll and the results.
Oh yeah, but if they watch it live, they can't. But let me try to see if I can share it pretty quickly and they can see it over there.
Yeah, try it. Let me see if I'll watch the stream and see if it's there.
See what, but it's bringing up something different, some whiteboard. What do you guys see? Because it's just all messy.
Right. Just a whiteboard.
Yeah, it's just a whiteboard. So you can draw a picture of what the results are.
Yeah, I can't really share.
Chris, where do you see show poll?
At the top of my screen, there's just a little thing that says poll results in green letters, and I tap on it and it brings up the poll.
Really?
I'm on an iPad.
Right next to your chat window, depending on your interface.
Yeah.
Right.
They'll say chat, share screen, polling, record.
Right. We are streaming this on YouTube, so they don't have any of those controls.
Right. Okay.
That's why. But yeah, I see that polling.
Yeah, when I share it, it just goes to the. I can't.
Someone mentioned the self noise of the CS3, and that is what steered me away from both that and the DPA line of boom mics personally. And I wondered if anyone else notices that. The self noise of Sheps is not high, but it's still much higher. All the MKH mics just have higher sensitivity and lower self noise than anything else. And comparatively, then you step into other things. The Sheps has what I call the Sheps butter. It just makes everything sound so nice, regardless of the noise. The DPA is like beautiful, good off-X response, but it just seems plain when you compare it to the two. The Sennheiser makes the voice pop, and the Sheps just makes everything beautiful. But the self noise or lack thereof is what really made me go with the Sennheiser line, especially the new stuff. You can just turn the gain up to the ceiling and get no hiss at all.
There wasn't enough rejection on the DPA or reach on the DPA compared to the Neumann 82 when I tried out the DPA shotguns. And so I just went back to the 82, which it's forgiving enough, but it's got enough reach and it's got enough rejection to it that, we could be shooting right next to the generator. And as long as you point the boom away from it, you get a pretty decent audio track from it.
I've about what you said, Chris, about the self noise. I've never had an issue with a CS. I own my own CS3, but I'm a boom op, so I work with a lot of other people's equipment. I've never ever ran into any self noise issue with a CS3. I think I mean, if I could have chosen the poll, I would have chosen it too. I think it's a great microphone, good reject. I always think of it as the the better 416. Like a CS3 to me is very similar to a 416 in a lot of ways, but it's better in a lot of other ways. The reach, the rejection, the sound quality in general. Yeah, I've never had any issue with self noise. Yep.
Every time I tested it, if I put it up against any of my Sennheiser stuff or anything else, it was like, bring up the Sennheiser, sounds fine. Bring up the CS3 or something else, and it's like a wall of self noise comparatively. It's not unusable, it's totally fine, but just in comparison, it was like one, I was hearing a whole bunch of white noise, and the other one I wasn't. And this is multiple mics, so it's not just a mic. I don't know, maybe it's personal.
All right, interesting.
Yeah, I never heard. I have a CS3, and I never had. Maybe Romy used it with me too, probably at one point. And it's much hotter microphone, so the output is much hotter. So people have to understand that you have to compensate for it. You have to turn it down a little bit in order to, maybe that's why you have a little bit noise. But for me, maybe just my microphone, maybe it's a newer version. I never had issues, and I used it indoors compared to the MKH50 at the same time. And I was listening into post-production. I couldn't tell actually which microphone was what. There was no differences because both were very close. Signal to noise ratio was nice. It sounded good. I loved it. And outdoors, you can't hear. I can't hear the self noise even if there were some. But indoors too, as I said, I never had any issues. I love indoors when I can for the Sanken. It depends on the room. If it's too reverberant, the Sanken wouldn't work as well. But I never.
Wired or wirelessly?
I use usually the HMA wirelessly. And maybe that's the key to dial in the transmitter a little bit. Maybe because well, let's say when we use the 50, my transmitter is at 30, but when we switch to the Sanken, I go down to 20, sometimes lower, because that's much hotter. Otherwise, it's peaking a lot more. So I know all the time that okay, switch to the Sanken, go down on the HMA to 20 to make sure it's not too much, and it seems to be working for me pretty well.
Yeah, that's a huge point, by the way. The gain, it's that it is a very hot microphone, therefore you have to turn it down. I don't know, maybe next time I'll check it. I'll notice that.
Can I ask a question about this discussion of boom mics? It just suddenly dawned on me that the majority of people here probably are talking about their boom mic going through a wireless transmitter. That's true because most people are doing wireless boom, right?
Yeah.
So, Chris, when you did your tests, you were doing it hardwired, right? In terms of self noise.
I did both, well, especially during the demo. I did both, but
because I think any kind of a self noise test, doing it through what I believe most of you are doing in terms of your wireless boom work, which is probably with electro wireless, I think is not a valid test.
I agree with that to some degree. I will say that I think the HMA is what ruined the DPAs for me. I think hardlined, the DPAs sound much better than they do on an HMA, like drastically. That noise floor goes away a big way. The MKH line is a much subtler difference between the using it wireless or wirelessly. And then, of course, now you get into newer digital systems that have virtually no noise floor anyway. It's very close to a hardwire.
That's why I'm bringing it up, because I think that's a variable that you certainly would have to consider if you're trying to evaluate the microphone, but it's plugged into a transmitter, anybody's transmitter.
I've had microphones that didn't do well with certain transmitters.
Yeah.
That's a thing. Like,
of course.
So.
I will just add that all of my recollections and talking about boom mics, we were always hardwired. Don was always hardwired, except for a few isolated shots over 40 plus years.
I feel like we're moving so far away from that. Hardwired is.
Oh, I know that. I know that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's with COVID affecting the way things are being shot now. It's who's sharing that? That
I'm trying to pull the poll up for some reason.
Yeah, I still haven't thrown my 2 duplexes away. I have 2, and or I haven't sold them, but I always hang on to those things. I've got 2 of them, and I've even re-terminated the ends so they can come right out of my my 6 and 7 series, or 6 and 8 series.
That's an emergency kit, isn't it?
It is, absolutely, it is.
It's what you use when you're on the rooftop of a downtown building, and your wireless frequencies or the entire band is just completely black. It's a giant black wall of RF. So you break out the cables, and that saved me a couple of times where we were going to go wireless, but there was nothing there.
They come in really handy when I need to remote a small speaker for playback 100 feet away from my cart too. I know that always is a well shielded cable that I can run a playback signal down, and no matter what, electrician goon crosses it with an electrical cable, I know it'll still be clean on the other end. So fine.
I think that's our paranoia, is always like, what if? So yeah, because I've always got my husband's a DP, and we usually go together. He'll be camera, I'll be sound, and it's like I gotta have these because you just never know. That one time that you don't have that cable with you will be the one time you needed it.
Yeah, 70% of the stuff in my kit is all the fallback stuff. You know, if all I had to take was exactly what I needed, shoot, I could go to work on a motorcycle.
Just the cable. The cable is usually the heaviest thing in, like, in a PA sound truck. They say the cable is the heaviest piece of equipment.
Yes, we carry the gear, but we schlep the cable.
Yeah.
All right, and the runner-ups were, the Sheps and the Sennheiser 416, which is a workhorse, as everybody says. I still have one, never gonna get rid of it.
I would say the big plus about the 416 is that since the 70s, whenever it was developed, that is what I refer to as the SM57 of the dialogue world, because every engineer who's ever mixed music knows what a 57 sounds like. Every dialogue editor across 30, 40 years, they know what a 416 sounds like. It's just really common, and it's very well known. So very few surprises with that mic.
And it still sounds good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Viable.
I work on a show when the mixer, they're using the older silver ones. Maybe it's not 416, maybe it's the older version. It's a T-powered one. And it still sounds good. Heavier than the new one, that's for sure, but it still sounds great.
Well, that's how you know it sounds good. The weight tells you it's going to sound good.
Yeah, it's a good controllable. It's a
416 is so much more, of course.
I probably did 6 or 7 movies with the 415 as the main microphone.
Yeah.
But I will tell you another little bit of history is that it wasn't always the standard. And when I was getting ready to do a job for Disney, they wanted me to go in and talk to the post people. And one of the first things the guy asked me, he says, "You're not using any of those new condenser microphones, are you?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I was planning on using my 415. He said, we're set up for, and he started to give me a list of Electro Voice dynamic microphones and various things that Disney had standardized, and they hadn't yet moved on to accepting a condenser microphone as a dialogue microphone on location. I went ahead and did the movie with the 415 anyway, and they were happy. But I did have to have the discussion. This was probably 1974, maybe. Yeah, so it hasn't always been the standard.
Jeff, I was born in 1973. Just
Nice.
So was I.
If we could just use an SM7B on everybody, we'd never hear any background noise.
That's right.
But how do you tape it to their chest?
I feel targeted.
No, not targeted. Just it's the mic, Aaron. But good choice.
I think I see the microphone, Aaron.
Just change the lens.
That's what I usually tell the operator. I'm like, well, don't shoot the boom. The boom's not in your shot. You're shooting the boom. Don't shoot the boom.
How many of you guys have used the A16?
A couple of
Okay.
times.
Yeah, Jeff.
Oh yeah, it's big in sports too.
Right. It's very directional. I used it once with the same mixer who had the I think it's 415. Then we were shooting outdoors, and I had to be on a ladder about 7-8 feet away from them. The boom pole was bending like crazy with the Zeppelin and everything on it, but that microphone did the job. We didn't have to wire them up, 2% talking. The reach was awesome. It sounded great. If it wouldn't be for the weight and the length of the microphone, I would get one probably. But that microphone sounded awesome. All right.
One of those long ones. I would love to try out one of those. Never had a mixer be like, here, do this. And I was like, I'd love to try though, because just the reach sounds amazing. The fact that you can reach from so far away and get that sound.
Yeah, sometimes we didn't even put it on a boom pole when I had to walk with the camera. We just point and shoot next to the camera pretty much. Same distance, sounded great.
That's amazing.
But they're like a laser. If you miss the cue, you hit the wrong person. The off-axis response on the older Sennheisers is just awful, like so unnatural and weird. And the 8070 fixed that, and the Chefs fixed that, of course. The CMIT doesn't have quite the reach of a 70, but it's amazing. You know, it just sounds natural. And 8070 does a good job with that while still having the long gun reach.
Yeah, that was the big problem with the directional microphones is that you had to commit to who, because you're going to hear this person, anybody else, forget about it, you know. And if you don't get over to that other person, or there's an overlap, you're dead.
I think that's why the CMIT is tied in the pole with the CS3, because the CMIT has that. The off axis is just beautiful on that.
The CS3 is its own thing because it has 3 capsules, right? And it's doing some weird magic to make it have the reach that it does in such a small form factor. Very interesting microphone.
Reach and rejection.
I have a question for everybody. When you're shooting a scene on the stage that's supposed to be outside, do you use your exterior mic or do you use your interior mic?
Whatever sounds best.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course, Chris, that's the answer.
I'm talking about like if you're trying to match something. Like, if you're trying to match something in downtown, but you're shooting it on a set that's got blue screen or green screen, and they've got.
Well, again, it goes back to if you're shooting an exterior on stage, and they decide, well, we've got to have the E-fans working. We've got to have all. It ends up having some of the same difficulties that you would have with an exterior scene that forces you to possibly use what you might consider your exterior mic, even though you are interior. But in terms of trying to match sound quality that you would get, no, because it can't be done.
Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed is that when we're shooting outside, your signal's going to sound a lot thinner than it would be when you're shooting inside, as far as, and this happens when I watch a feature or watch a TV show or something like that, where it's like it's a scene and you're watching the scene and they're supposed to be outside, but it just sounds way too thick and way too polished to have been shot outside.
There's a lot of reasons for that though, Aaron.
Yeah.
If you think about it, probably the exterior scene, they had to do a lot more to it in post to make it even usable. Okay. That's why your exterior scene may sound so much thinner. Also, it's the nature of the way in which sound travels in an open free field versus the way sound travels in a, in an interior space with reflections.
So you're saying, Jeff, what I think you're saying, and I think you mentioned this already, is that if they're using E-fans and other things to produce the exterior look, then you're probably better off using your exterior mic.
Yeah, you may have to.
Okay.
I would temper that with, I always want a mic so the biggest difference between inside and outside is you hear the room, right? And a lot of that comes
Right.
from the directionality of a mic having a rear lobe in the pickup pattern and stuff. So I very largely, when I'm inside, I'm trying to get rid of the rear lobe and not use interference tubes. So a 50 or a 41 is great because they have a very small rear lobe. But then when I discovered the 8040 a while ago, I've had them for a couple of years now. It's amazing. There's no rear lobe. So as long as you can get that mic close, it sounds fantastic. And not hearing the room is sort of my goal when I go from inside to outside.
I agree with you, Chris. That's a very valid point, is that if you're shooting an exterior scene, but you're shooting it indoors, you want to minimize any of that hearing the room. It's like the reverse of what, where I said earlier, I like to hear the room. Well, in that case, you don't want to hear it. So you have to hope that, first of all, that the stage that you're shooting on is as neutral as possible. And then you might choose a microphone that's going to give you the least encumbered sound, where there's the least amount of feeling of any kind of reflection, because it's the reflections that give away the fact that you're not exterior.
Yeah. So if you've got a acoustically neutral room and you're shooting an exterior on a stage on a blue screen or green screen, would you want your mic, if the room is acoustically neutral, and this is the difference here, would you want your mic as close as possible, or would you want to give it a little bit of distance just to mirror the outside world?
I would get it as close as possible, I think, to try and minimize everything, because ultimately the sound that you're recording can't be natural. It's going to have to be made to feel natural and appropriate in post, where they add exterior ambience and all, because your green screen stage, there's nothing natural about it. It's a completely artificial construct. So
that's my idea, is I always think, how much can I isolate this so that the sound designer can add to make it sound like it's supposed to. So my job is get it as narrow a field as I can, little off access. I just want to pinpoint in and get them, to good, a good, miking and a good boom setup, like Chris said, with a lot of, you don't want bouncing of, you want to make sure that you're baffled and everything.
Yeah, give them a fighting chance at being able to create ultimately what the sound has to be. Whit Norris, do you have something to say about this?
No, I pretty much agree with what everyone else has said. But the whole thing with you want to match the best you can, and I don't want to hear the room. Right. Whatever mic's going to do that, and they will, post-production is going to match with what you did in front of a blue screen versus what was shot outdoors. I'm going to turn that over to them and give them the cleanest track I can get, and the cleanest track would be without
to hear as
little of the room as possible. Yeah.
Good.
It's very hard in post to create an outdoor natural reverb. The close mic is unnatural sounding. That's not how we hear things. We hear it with the room and the space that we're in. And you can put someone in a stadium or a warehouse with a click of a button in post these days. But in a weird alleyway outside, that's not an algorithm that's easily created. And so if you get a lav track or a dead dry boom track that's super tight, that's very difficult to make for outside. And then again, in the reverse of that, it's very hard to take the room out of something that's in it. So for post, it's just, if you have to compromise on your creativity, it's better to just get it dry and clean.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, I disagree. I think they can create a lot these days, but it's how much time they have to spend on it. But I mean, with the tools that are available for post-production, they can really change it from an interior to an exterior to whatever, to where it doesn't sound as closely mic'd. They have all the tools to do it, but the real question is, do they have the budget and time to do it?
Yeah,
if you're on an episodic series, they're having to crank it out in so many days to do the dialogue edit, the mix and everything else, versus a high price feature where they have a dialogue editor has a lot of time to work with everything.
I'm always astounded when I hear about the post schedules on your basic TV show. I don't even know how they managed to get a track out that makes any sense at all, you know.
Yeah, but the toolboxes they have now are pretty incredible.
It's getting better and better, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
But they do need the time though.
Yes.
My
Sure.
least favorite experience doing episodic is when they come to us for wild lines that they call ADR, but they're wild lines, and they basically don't give us any kind of heads up of what the situation is, what scene it is. I mean, they'll give us a scene number, but they won't say, well, this was outside and this was this and this was that. And so we're just basically recording them as close as possible with as little of the room as possible. And we let post decide where they're going to put the wild lines.
My point was, you're absolutely right, but just that it's harder to create a natural outdoor environment than it is to slap a reverb for a hall or a room on there. Just again, it goes back to time. So, you know, just clarifying what I said.
Yeah, and I understand, Chris, I've done a lot of stuff that was interior on the stage that was all exterior, technically took place in exterior, in a lot of the Fast series and that, but they make it sound right, in my opinion. But then again, they've got the time and the budget.
Hey, wait, Greg had a question about, probably it's a better question for you. Microphones used for dialogue in cars. So what's your experience? What you guys usually use? You did a bunch of photo shoots.
You know, it depends on what we can get in there. We've used everything from the Sheps Colette series to 50s and to the gooseneck DPAs. But it depends on if we're miking from above or below, but we use a lot of the tools in the toolbox. But I would say those are the three main mics, and then of course whatever lav that we have on them also. But it depends. It's going to depend on the frame and how many cameras we're shooting as to what we can get in there. I found that the DPAs, they don't sound as good from below. They sound better from above. Planning, so they're better in a visor. Obviously, the 50 and the Sheps sound better below. You know, if you can get something, you know, down at the gear shifter or console or whatever coming up. But it also depends on how wide the cameras are shooting as to what tool you're going to use.
And do you change your tools when you, because sometimes they drive?
Yes.
Hard.
Yeah. No, we change out the tools, but again, when doing all these films, we'll do it actually really driving. We'll do it on the stage where, you know, people are pushing the vehicle, grips are, or we'll do it on platforms that are rocking and shaking. And you've got to always remember, or at least, you know, what's always in the back of my mind, I know how much sound design is going to go on top of this, because every car, and, you know, thanks to the designer, Peter Brown, every car has its own personality, every vehicle. So there's going to be a lot of vehicle noise and drama and music and everything. Long as I can get the dialogue fairly clean, even with all the different effects that might be going on when we're actually shooting the dialogue, they can make it work.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I'm sure there are lots of challenges for you guys on those shoots with the cars.
Yeah,
but it's fun.
Yeah.
Whit, can I ask you one question? It seems
Sure.
to me that when you're doing car stuff, you like to mic the actors as well as whatever else you might be doing plant-wise. Have you always done that, or have you only started doing that once you had multi-track?
I want to say in the early days, Jeff, probably in the Nagra days, we didn't, and of course wirelesses were not as popular. I don't remember lobbing people, you know, 25 years ago, doing car work. But since it's progressed, and I think with our multiple tracks, and I think even when we, I can't say I remember even on the stereo Nagra, but I think when we started getting into that, and also how noisy a lot of the process trailers were, that we started lobbing them, you know, when we did get into multi-track.
Right, using two techniques instead of just the one. Because I know in the earliest days of my career, I pretty much had to commit to this is the way we're going to do it. You couldn't have all these sort of, although there were some people even back then, Bruce Bazance, for example, was one of the early sound mixers that I knew of who would go at a scene with multiple techniques. You know, he ran as many as 3 mononagras back in the day, which I just couldn't be bothered to try and do that. But once multi-track came into, you know, and when I say multi-track, I mean more than 2. Then you could experiment, you know, why not? You know, if we can put mics on the actors, have that as one of your options also. But I would still, as a sound mixer, I would still commit to the planted Sheps that was down low. And I really wanted to do the whole scene with that one microphone. For the most part, we could do it that way. But the times when that didn't work, it was great that we ended up having another planted microphone or something in the visor or mics on the actors, because they could then go to those tracks to help it.
Yeah, and also you had to, you know, do the fact a lot of times it's hard to boom in a car or around a car, outside a car, just due to reflections. But if they're getting in the car and leaving or something like that, you would have to rely on to use the wires to get them in the car.
Yep, I've done that, and you crossfade from the wires as they're getting in the car to the plant. Once they get settled, you know.
Yeah, but I want to say in probably the DAT days, at least when we had 2 tracks, it seemed like I can remember, you know, putting the lavs on one track and the plants on the other and kind of doing 2 mixes.
Yeah, the split mix.
Split mix. But definitely, you know, when the Diva 2 came out, then we could start breaking things up. Because that was our first true multi-track recorder. When I say that, more than 2.
Right. Good.
Great. So let's move on to the next poll. I'm gonna put the poll up first, and don't vote for anything. Just let me know if I missed any microphone. This is about lavalier microphones, so I don't want anybody complain later that it's not on the list. So I'm gonna put the poll up there first. Don't vote. Just let me know if I missed anything. I can add it right now. So here is gonna be our microphone.
Oh, Sabi, you're a terrible person.
I know. So here we go. Let me know if I missed any of the microphones that you guys want to vote on. If everything looks good, then we can start polling. But I tried everything that I could. So there's I think 10 of them or something.
You even got the Tram 50 in there.
I had to.
Who's the one person that already voted and didn't listen?
And let's go with the voting, and that's it.
Where's the ECM 50?
You see, that's what I'm saying.
Just kidding.
What about the Sony 77B?
I think I maxed out the 10 questions anyway, so even if I want to add something, I couldn't. Sorry, guys.
The ECM 50 is actually the size of what's now a mini CMIT.
Right. Can we vote now?
Sony, the same size is like one of those huge mics too.
Oh yeah, the Shure mics. Justin Ross just posted about the Shure Twinplex. If that's the new one that they just had at the last NAB, those sounded pretty good. I was
Is that a directional lav?
Justin, can you tell us about that too? I only listened to them on the NAMM show floor, and everything sounds like crap on the NAMM show floor. So
they're omnidirectional. It's just Shure's newest offering to meet demands for their new transmitter and that field. So it's an answer to the Sanken and the DPA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And it sounds good.
It does.
Sure. It's decent.
What was the price point?
Oh man, I don't know about the mic, but the lav transmitter from Shure was like $2,000.
The mic's like 500.
Yeah,
I have this up thing, there with DPA.
Yeah, I have this thing about lav mics. I'm comfortable spending $350, maybe $400. You start getting north of 400, and I start getting a little frustrated. When I first started looking at DPA, I was like $589 for a mic. I'm like, dude, like
Chris. Yeah. So if you can't get comfortable, then you can't get comfortable. You know, I mean.
Well, you know what? For it to be that expensive, it has to be measurably above what I already have, and it's not. So I'll say that, you know, I own 3 or 4 of the mics, but they're still like, you know, I have more Sankens, I have more, I have more, you know. So.
Yeah, like the 6060s, like for me, Canadian wise, they're almost $1,000.
Oh,
I'm
Um,
telling you, to have somebody
so I'm like, no way.
strapped to their body $1,000 is like, man.
Yikes.
The way we
about-
see actors treat most of our wireless lavs anyway, it's just, you know, having to get production to want to reimburse you or want to replace one of the damaged mics the way that the actors treat them. It's almost impossible at that point. So,
You know, I hate watching basketball. I'm not really like, I don't hate it, but I don't really get into it at all. But there was a basketball game on a few years ago. Pau Gasol was playing for the Lakers, and there was a penalty. He was involved in it, but then another player had to shoot a free throw. So as they're going to the free throw line, Pau Gasol's lav falls off, and then he's trying to pull it off of his jersey. He's wrapping it around his hand, trying to yank it from his jersey, and it's really taped on there really good. So then he pulls the slack out from the, and I wish I've looked all over for the video of this, but he pulls the slack out of the pack and then puts it around his foot to try and get it off of his shirt using his foot. And this is the part of the Laker game where I'm going, no, what are you doing? And they're like, what's going on with the game? I'm like, no, he's destroying his lav mic. And, you know, that was the one point I was passionate about a Laker game. But man, I just, the thought of that being $1,000 microphone or whatever, granted, you know, the Lakers have plenty of money and hopefully whoever was shooting that coverage was going to cover it. But my gosh, you know, that
For me, it's
for me.
it's the combination of everything. So I think a lot of people agree that the DPAs sound a little better than other lavs, but the 6060 really crossed the line because for me, it's as easy to place as a B6 where it's tiny and minuscule. You can shove it into any seam or anywhere, and the design makes it not make noise. Like the grill on the Close 11, if that touches anything, you're toast. And then, you know, in addition to that, it's beautiful sound, it's smallness, and all of those things together made it worth it to me. I have a bunch of Sankins, not about to get rid of my B6s and Sankins, but I don't use them very often anymore.
Yeah, I got to say, the first time I heard a DPA, I think it was a 4061. I was doing a playback day for Steve Nelson on the show The Last Ship, and we had to record a girl singing live, and we were on the beach in Malibu. They were sitting around a fire. One guy was faking playing the guitar. We had earwigs for both her and the girl. There was a girl in a bathing suit, and she sang a song, and there was a very poignant moment in the episode. And I put a DPA on her, and that Steve had, and I gotta say, man, we tracked her vocal live right there, and it sounded amazing. It sounded really good. So I was definitely impressed with the mics, but then the price point just, you know, it kept me it still kept me from really diving into having a bunch of them. But I like having them around because they sound great.
With me in Arizona, we deal with a lot of hot humidity, a lot of, you know, outdoor. We do a lot of indie film out here. So I need workhorses. And so luckily I have a community because obviously I'm a younger sound mixer, even though I've been doing it 25 years. I've got guys who've been doing it longer. So I buy off their old mics and they're all investing in the newer DPAs. And I hear the difference and I would love to go DPA, but again, it's like, how well is it going to do outside if I have a young actor, actress with it and they decide to yank it off, even though I've told them, look, I'm strapping $1,000 to you with my transmitter and my mic. And how well they do with the heat, because it gets really hot out here and sweating through tape, body tape and everything. You know, I need something that I know. So I'm not sure how the DPAs, so if anybody can tell me, how do the DPAs do as a workhorse?
In my opinion, they're tougher and they're waterproof. If you put the mic upside down, they can be completely drenched and you know, the actor moves, shakes, whatever, the drops come off. You know, obviously if they stay submerged, they don't sound like anything like any mic, but the Sankins paper diaphragm or whatever will be toasted by too much sweat or too much rain.
Generally, the Sankin CS 11s, I mean, generally you just can dry them off. You just take a towel and it'll pull the moisture out and they'll work again, but they are workhorses. But I am a fan of the DPAs and that's what we prefer to use. But when I need something that's a little more robust, I might go back to a COS 11. But we're big fans of the 6060 these days, and they are durable. But if you're if you're with a harsh costume or whatever, sometimes the COS 11 might be a better choice.
And
But,
for
but also, Lisa, you need to check out the ShamWow for absorbing water. I'm serious. We cut them up, the small pieces, wrap them around. They absorb the water. It's something that I came up with on Fast Five when we had all these actors in, the tight shirts and everybody sweating right down their chest, and the microphones were filling up with perspiration all the time, and we were having to, they would still work, the COS 11s, but we'd have to, wipe them down. And we started using the thinner ShamWow, and it works. And Mike Clark has even perfected it even more so on The Walking Dead.
That's awesome. Is there like a little thing for that? Because I've been using, I go every day, and when I'm on a hot set, where I know they're going to be sweating through, I change out, because I sanitize my mics all the time, because even before all of this stuff happened, because to me, I don't want to put a mic on that I know has an old, absorption pad on it and stuff. So, but that's fantastic. It never even occurred to me, and I'm pretty outside of the box here in Arizona to put.
Generally what we do with the COS 11, just below the capsule, we'll just wrap a couple of spins of the ShamWow around it, and it'll absorb the water. And then you can also use it with your bunion cushions and whatever to put in and tape in. I want to say, if you go to the Atlanta Sound Mixer Facebook page, you're going to have to do some twirling back. I'm not sure how the best way to do searches on a Facebook page, but Mike Clark put up a couple of years ago a lot of pictures, and it's been brought up in the past on the setups that he started using with it, which were a little more elaborate than what I did. But we, on Godzilla, we did humongous rain scenes and half the movie, I think it rained. And but we were using the ShamWow on the actors, and it held up, without watering down the COS 11s.
I thought with the metal windscreens that go with them, I thought if you have them on them, I always understood they gave some water resistance. Did they not?
They fill up with water, Justin.
Do they? Okay.
They've got rain and sweat going, generally the mic's going to be on the chest, and generally,
Oh, I see.
It's going to go right down into it unless you have something to absorb it. And then, after a while, the moleskin will fill up. But ShamWow, anyway, another use, 1001 uses.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because I've used moleskin, I've used all kinds of stuff, and just having to multiple times a day, go in there, cut it out, put it, redress it. It takes up time. It's super annoying. And, sometimes I don't want my boom op, who I love, but doesn't really know the delicacy of some of those microphones and doesn't know where to set it in position, how far up I need it above that moleskin, all of those little things that I know what is going to work for that mic to get it to give me the best sound that I need.
Yeah, it's not going to be this. It's not going to be the save all of everything. I mean, you're going to have to change it out throughout the day. Sometimes, after lunch or whatever. But you'll get a lot farther than you will with any other products. I mean, we experimented with feminine hygiene products and different things that absorbed moisture. We tried a lot of stuff, and Kevin Summers and Doug Cameron told me, I said, let's try ShamWow. And they both looked at me like, I was crazy. And we went to Walmart and got the ShamWow and started using it, and like, wow, it worked. And then we started sharing that with other people, and people have taken it to new levels in some of their rigs. But look for a Mike Clark post and maybe ShamWow. I don't know if you search it on our Atlanta group.
What is ShamWow?
ShamWow was basically one of these commercials that it was a towel that could wipe and absorb everything. You could wipe your car with it. It would clean up huge puddles. It would absorb tons of water.
Is it a chamois type material, or?
No, not exactly. It's more of a cotton type material, but and it's kind of an off orange, and it comes in two different thicknesses. There's a thinner one and a thicker one. I mean, I think you can still get it at Walmart. I mean, it comes in a big sheet. So if you buy one, it'll last you, for a year or two. But it was, the guy was on there screaming, oh, it cleans everything. This was probably 10 years ago or 15 years ago.
Yeah, no,
well, it does a good job. Yeah, of absorbing water, and it just holds it rather than leaking it out, so that and it pulls water away from things. So I don't know why I didn't think of it. And like I said, I've been pretty outside of the box with the stuff that I use, because it's Arizona, you know? I mean, no matter what, it's either hot and wet or hot and dry. Really no in between.
It's like a cloth sponge, Jeff. It's not made out of sponge material, but it's material that's cloth, that's I would say maybe cotton based, but it absorbs like a sponge, just sucks in the water.
So just for the record, I want to read out for our people, our streamers on YouTube. I want to read out the poll results for the lav mics. In first place, we have the Sanken COS11 with 20 votes. Since the DPAs were split among lines, there's the 4060 series, 6060, and the discrete core. Those in total receive 15 votes between all three of those. So I would consider that a second. And then the Countryman with 10 votes. And the B6 and the B3, that was 11 votes. The B3 got a vote. And then we rounded out the bottom with the MKE1 and MKE2 with a vote each. So those are the results there. So Sanken and
actually, and the tram got 12. Oh, weird.
Oh, look, 12. Yeah, sorry, I had to scroll.
For tram.
The tram 50 got 3 votes.
That's very surprising.
Tram's a great mic.
Yeah, those were all over the place when I first started.
Anybody have the adapter for the tram that allows you to make it a BLM? Because I've used the tram 50s, putting them on walls in places where I need the ambience of the room, like maybe a concert or somebody, delivering a speech somewhere. And you just take the tram 50 and you put it in this little adapter extender, put it on a back wall somewhere, and it becomes a BLM mic.
That's where the DPA really shines.
Yeah, I used to use the Sonotrim, which was sort of a tram knockoff, and it had a similar sort of boundary layer accessory. Used it a couple of times, and I've used
myself.
I've used the DPA boundary layer accessory.
Another side note while we're still on the lavs, another dark secret trick to beating water and moisture. I think this only applies to DPAs, but as DPAs are waterproof mics, if you're going to be in really heavy water scene, this is not manufacturer supported or approved, but you can just take the cap off and have it naked, and it'll shed water like the water just never stays because the capsule is not covered and so as long as you don't have high wind, you can dip the mic, it'll self-clean itself just from being without a cover. And that is a good trick if you're doing some rain work or water work or something.
I've used the B6 before on surfers when they said they're not going to get into the water. Of course, they did get into water. I just put the microphone upside down, use the vampire clip, nice and safe, went into water. It was nice and bubbly underwater, came out. It took about 2 seconds for the water to get out of the microphone, but then it sounded back to normal again. But of course, we had to clean it later just to make sure. But I was surprised that the microphone didn't get ruined. We got the sand in and out of the water. I was very surprised.
Oscar Soundtech makes a knockoff of the Tram 50 as well as a knockoff of the Sanken COS 11, and both of them, they're around $120 each, I think. And the knockoff of the Sanken is a little bit hotter, but it will fit the windscreens, and I think the knockoff is also water resistant. So
I don't know, probably everybody. Hi, everybody, by the way. Regarding sweat on the chest area and sweating into the mic, if you have to hide it under clothes or stuff. I was tipped this skin clothing spray, basically, but in German. You just spray it on the skin and it seals off the skin, so that area, there will be no more sweat. I think I got it from Simon Bishop. Simon?
Yeah, Simon Bishop.
Guy.
Yeah. We got some products that we use also here in the States. Chris Harris, help me. What is that? The swabs that we use that put
I know
and it seals up the skin to where it won't sweat. But you can't.
It's like a silicone layer.
Yeah.
I don't know the name either, but
I'll have to look it up. We've got it in our expendables, and we use that also, and it helps dry out the skin. But the problem is, it doesn't stop the whole body from sweating, but it will help your tape and everything to stay on. But it doesn't It doesn't help with the sweat that's running down, but it helps the moleskin and everything and your different adhesives that you use. It does help them stay on. And I'm going to have to look that up. And I'll get you. They also make a product to remove it. So we give the little packets the little foil packets that have the little cloth in it, and they can clean themselves off with it later too, because it does leave a little adhesive on the skin. But it's a
Skin Tech.
medical approved product.
Skin Tech is it called? I think.
What now?
Skin Tech is what it's called. I think.
Yeah, I believe that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. That's another, but then you have to really touch the person and rub it in. I'm sorry, sir or ma'am, can I or can you? And this is like less intrusive, like just a few puffs.
Yeah, you do have to rub it on, and then you have to let it dry for about 30 seconds before you can apply moleskin or anything. But the fact that it comes in individual wraps these days is kind of a good thing.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm a female sound mixer, so I don't get much fuss. But I'm also I don't care how many times I could be working with the most famous actor, actress, doesn't matter. I will always approach them and say, is it okay if I reach into your clothing? Is it okay if I have you remove your shirt? Do you feel comfortable with this? Would you like someone to come and stand with me? I've always been that way for my 25 years doing this. So, and really proper. So I've never, for me, it's been pretty easy to say, oh, and they'll just say, oh, hey, can you do it?
That's a big thing actually, because I think that's a very that's a nice aspect of talking your subject, or it's not a subject, the people. But now during Corona, you actually don't want to talk. And I was thinking about the two things. They don't combine that well, because you want to be silent. You don't want to talk because you're gonna spray more shit. Sorry for pardon my French. But that was in my mind a while. Now you're talking about it, like, wow, yeah, that's something that's a collision of interest. I have no solution.
Alana, who thirds for me, she loved it on Passenger. I'll tell this little tale on her, but she loved it every day. She goes, guess what? Chris Pratt came up to me and pulled up his shirt. But let's see, Chris preferred the lav rod. And so Alana would just give him the rod and he would, run it down his costume, and of course the pack was attached to his ankle. But it's funny, certain actors prefer certain tools, I've noticed. As far as
when Ursa came out with stuff and I still had some Neopaks left over, it was very short time before I completely switched, because I used my new stash of Neos or of Ursas, and then one of the last actors got one of my leftover Neos, and they complained, and not like probably just to me. They're like, "Oh, I don't get the fancy new ones. I love those ones." So I'm like, next time, tomorrow.
Now, has anybody run into an actor that had their own, so to speak, packs that were RF shielded, that they were nervous about RF, and they had these shielded, and you could buy this stuff, and we did on one show. We bought it, and we bought the material, and had wardrobe sew up pockets, that we could have dropped the transmitter in. But I don't think they understand that all the radiation is coming out of the antenna, not the pack. But I've run across 2 or 3 actors that had their own thing or wanted to have something RF shielded. And the thing about it is, they're walking around with this against their head, which puts out much more RF than any of our transmitters. But anyway, I just always have found that a little amusing. I don't know if anyone else has ran across that.
I worked with
just say the lines.
And he was the same way. He insisted that we always wrap his transmitters.
I had an actress recently that she said, well, I'm allergic. I've got a metal allergy. So I had to take a whole bunch of moleskin and wrap the entire transmitter in this moleskin just so that none of the metal would touch her skin. So I know it's not exactly the same thing, but still, I've never heard of that before, where somebody has that kind of severe metal allergy that they can't have any kind of metal near their skin at all. So
you think I would have heard of that? Because I, deal with a lot of people in Sedona, and, a lot of those, you do a lot of metaphysical stuff over here. And I've never had somebody tell me, oh, I don't want this touching my skin, but yeah, you'll offer them like a certain kind of drink and they'll be like, oh, I don't put that in my body. And then you see them eating a hot dog later and you're like, okay. So yeah, it's weird. Their quirks.
They have their own set of rules.
I know a lot of actors are generally just don't want laughs, just don't want to be loved at all.
Yeah, but well, the same way that we said it, once we wanted to mic up a helmet like those miners' helmet because they were wearing so much overalls that it was hard to mic them. So I'm like, oh, we can put the transmitter microphone in the helmet. Perfect, sounds great. My B6 is right there. But actually, she didn't want to have a transmitter close to her head because of the radiation and stuff. But as we said, but then she was walking on with her phone on her face all day long. That one puts out at least 1 kilowatt or whatever, 1 watt or whatever, megawatt, gigawatt. So much more power than our transmitters.
Yeah, not a kilowatt.
1.25 gigawatts or whatever is that word. But anyway, so she didn't want to have the transmitter in her helmet because she was worried about the radiation. So, but I had an actor who was allergic to the neopax. He didn't like to put it on his skin at his leg because he was allergic. So we had to come up with something else. And we worked it out, but he was kind enough to tell us not to use the neopax back then. And there were no other options some time ago. But that was the only time. I never heard about metal problems. Heat, yeah, that's a different story, but not the metal.
There's also Coband that you can use instead of neopax. They're like basically one-time use type of things. They're the elastic bandages that work like an ace bandage, but they're, semi-permanent. They stick to each other. So you could probably use the Coband instead of the neopac if somebody is allergic to the neopac, if it's that type of allergy.
That's a medical thing, right?
Yeah, Coband.
I think Jan McLaughlin used that a lot. She was the first person I heard using that.
It makes for a lower profile mount than the Neopax did. It's probably about the same with the Ursas and the Viviana straps because they're very thin, but it's definitely much thinner than the Neopax.
Yeah, we've got some in our kit. We use it occasionally.
So, Chris, I have one more quick poll if we want to do it. We still have some time. It's about boom poles. Shall we?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
All right.
I'll answer for Chris either way.
So here we go. People listening on YouTube, this is a poll about boom poles. What is your favorite boom pole? Could be multiple choices. Let's see how we do.
Sorry, there was something wrong with my coffee mug. It ran out of coffee. So
It's not refilling by.
Happens all the time. Yeah, boom poles.
Yeah.
While people are voting, one thing I can say about boom poles is that there's definitely, it seems like boom poles are very region specific. It seems like the European preference for boom poles is different than the stuff that's sold in the States. And then
the other thing that used to be very region specific was internal cable or external cable.
I could always tell a New York boom op because they would wrap the cable outside of their boom pole. And that to me was New York style. And
yep.
LA was always
that's the first time I saw it. Was the first time I worked in New York.
And then in Europe, it's a different thing. It's like externally cabled with no headphones. That's European boom.
The other thing that's interesting is we've shifted to end-mounted transmitters in recent years, and that's become very popular. And I did that very early on, but I think that's changed some people's preferences a little bit.
It's all in a state of flux because of wireless boom work and because of the whole practice of putting the transmitter either at the end of the pole or at the mic end. So it's.
Yeah, the boom operator I learned from initially was Tom Hardig, and he was a big fan of internally flow-through cables, internal cable but flow-through, and he was always wireless, at least on the first movie I worked with him on. And he's since progressed to just putting the transmitter on the butt end of the microphone at the end of the at the end of the pole. Like he's.
I realized I checked the wrong thing, but I should have checked flow through, because flow through means that all of my fish poles were straight cables internal. So that's considered flow through.
Yeah,
Yes.
because internal. What I meant was internally coiled cable.
Yeah, no, I never had the internal coiled.
That might have been a separate pole to do with the way you want the cable done.
Yeah.
So we'll try to take that into account when we tally.
Yeah, it was on this pole though.
Well, I cut my teeth in Arizona, and we always would coil the cable outside, exactly like you guys were talking New York style. So it was textbook. That's what I would do. And
Really? Wow.
I think that, from what the way Tom explained it to me was, when you're doing feature shoots, you're generally doing, less setups per day, and you have time to really rehearse and do things. So the externally coiled cable or the flow through cable, you have more time to set your length, prep it, and that really does keep the rig a lot quieter. But as multi cameras came in, and 7, 8, 9 page days, the internally coiled cable is now it's like
all the bullshit showed up.
None of my poles have cables in them. I use the transmitter at the mic end. And when I need to go cabled, I'll do external cabled. That is how I'm originally from Israel. I worked there for many years, and that's how we worked there. Like, we wrapped it around. The positive of wrapping the cable externally is having that control over the cable. There are actually two things. One is that you have control over that cable. You can tighten it, you can loosen it, you can give it slack, you can do whatever you want with it. The second thing is I think that's the lightest way to have the pole set up. An internal cable is obviously heavier, coiled cable. Maybe a straight cable is lighter because you have less wraps.
And the third advantage is that if something happens to the cable, you can replace it easily.
Yeah, it's like driving a manual to me. Like I feel like I have more control over what's happening. I see the cable, I can swap it out, I can make it longer, I could do whatever I want with it. Generally today I use the transmitter at the mic, and because things just move so fast today, and that's the fastest way to work, the heaviest way to work too.
Also, you totally eliminate cable noise that way. You just never, because any good boom op can boom with a coil cable or a straight cable or anything and not make noise during the take. But when they say cut and bringing it back in, and I love not ever hearing that.
Yeah, me too.
Like back mules, they like, I'm a back mule. I do it all, mix and boom at the same time. I don't have to hassle with the cable outside. Inside for me is perfect. But all the people that I know that are solely boom operators, they have it externally.
The transmitter on the mic end of the pole, I think, began in Europe. That was my first recollection of before anybody was doing it here.
I always did it that way just because I felt like you get a more valid connection. I didn't want to have an interference. Like, why add another even 5 feet to your rig of it having to go through that whatever shielded XLR you have? To me, it's just made sense to connect it straight to the end, to get it as clean as possible and as easy as possible.
The reason for not doing it though is the weight. It changes the whole geometry and weight of the microphone.
Yeah.
Very light these days though.
Well, yeah, but I mean, when we first started doing it.
Oh, of course.
I saw pictures from fish poles in Europe with, big transmitter and a power supply for a phantom, and, all piled on. You couldn't even find the microphone, and then trying to boom with that.
For example, my PSC, I have 2 long poles, a PSC and a Panamic. My PSC pole exterior with a Zeppelin and the transmitter is the pole is just unusable. It's a big bend. It's too much for the pole. I'll do that with the Panamic if I need to. The PSC kind of is reserved for a second boom or interior. I barely use that one anymore. But Jeff is correct. That putting the transmitter up top makes the whole thing like a whole different ball game. It's much heavier.
Also, RF, line of sight. I run all my in-mounted transmitters at their lowest possible power settings, so I get better battery life. But lithium batteries, and most of the time I'm not changing them for the whole day.
Definitely an RF advantage having that transmitter up.
And Chris, the lithium batteries are lighter too than the rechargeables, so you're saving weight on that too.
That's a good
So
point.
poll results.
Yeah, K-Tech is flying. Nobody got PSC for some reason.
I think Kevin's a little mad at me for the unmounted transmitter thing. He hates it, but everyone likes it and they use it now.
Oh, he's gotten used to it. I mean, we're pretty dialed in, and with some of the stuff that they made, for some of the cables and stuff they made for us, and when he was on the Boom tour with Chris Howland and the gang. Anyway, we're pretty dialed in. He's gotten used to it.
Yeah, the newer K-Tech definitely is a little bit bigger feeling in your hands. It's a pretty cool poll. But just to articulate the results for the people on the stream, first place was K-Tech with 67% of the vote. Looks like second place is Ambient, and then VDB after that, and then Panamic and Loon bringing up the rear. PSC, which they didn't get any votes, but I gotta say I've handled a few other polls. They feel pretty good. And there was I forget which brand that I think it was last year or a year before, a brand came out where they were like, you only have to do a quarter turn and you can adjust your length without having to fully loosen it. PSC had done that years before that and had come out with that a long time ago. But now it's like nobody really realized that until they discovered that either it was Panamic did it or one of the other polls did it.
K-Tech's new polls are what advertised that last year. Their newest polls are like a quarter turn lot.
Yeah. So I was just pretty amazed because sometimes there's stuff out there that we just miss. And the PSC polls were, I've owned a few over the years and they were really decent. I got to say though, my heart breaks for Loon because Loon was a really great poll that raised the bar for everybody. And
what happened there?
Well, yeah, I was going to say if anybody could get a hold of a Loon poll, it would have definitely won.
Don, I guess it's been long enough. Don Wetzel passed away. He passed away without a will. He didn't have a family per se to pass things down to his ideas. There were a few companies interested in buying his business, but upon looking at what was there, it was a lot like what Chinda's shop looked like after he passed away, which was just like you kind of walk through a laboratory where a mad scientist worked. And there was nothing there. There was no schematic drawings. There's no CAD drawings. There's nothing you couldn't tell what he was working on or what he had completed. There was not enough information there to pull together really anything. So none of the buyers, he literally left the entire estate to his next door neighbor that he would have coffee and breakfast with once or twice a week. And he lived in a very sleepy town up in, I think it was Whitefish, Montana, I want to say. But it was a very, very sleepy town where everybody knows everybody. And I talked to his neighbor who received all of his estate. And he was like, I have no idea what to do with this. And it was pretty heartbreaking, but he was really great at what he did. But I think a lot of us ran into it with Loon when it was tough to deal with him because there was no secretary there to answer the phone. He was literally doing everything. He had a partner for a while in Southern California, and then that didn't work out. But he ended up that's what he was happy doing, was making the polls. And so all the clerical part and the administrative part of the business kind of fell by the wayside, and you just kind of had to call him at certain times a day and he would pick up the phone. But it was very hard. The customer service reputation of the business was not good. And that was why, but that's part of the brilliance of the products were all handmade by him. And that was part of the brilliance of the products. And, but you had to deal with the lack of the administrative stuff there too. So, but anyway, I still own 3 Loon poles. I try to pick up a few more just to keep parts for them. I had one that snapped, unfortunately, on a show about 18 months ago. And luckily I was able to take it to K-Tech. K-Tech serviced it for me and got it totally back up to spec. They were able to replace the tube. So anyway, that's the story with Loon. The polls I love the new K-Tech stuff. The new poll is great. I still have one of my K-Tech classic polls. And and since then I've tried the VDB stuff when I was, we were in Europe last year with K-Tech. We got to meet the owners of VDB and they were very nice. But yeah, it was, it's really cool to see what's out there now and how it's developing.
I think Dave Schaff had something to say.
Dave.
I'm not sure, but Dave, were you going to chime in on something?
No, not really. I guess the only thing I would say is I've been a long time K-Tech guy, and I realized that Colorado is a production backwater, but everybody here always seems to use flow through straight cables. I've never used a wrap, but I've seen other people use them. I guess it all just depends on what you get used to.
Yeah, right.
For sure. Yeah, I can say that I guess over the last year or two, we have certainly seen an uptick in K-Tech sales in Europe, and we've also seen an uptick in Panamic and BDB here in LA at least. So I think the both brands are starting to get a little more global, which is kind of cool. I will always be a fan of having a variety of options to choose from, because this is the axe. This is the thing you have in your hand 12 hours a day. And this has to feel natural to you, because there's too many variables going on around you for you to actually have to think about what you got, the instrument in your hand. So
the mic and the boom pole are the only thing that'll last your career.
Yeah. Hey, I know Eric's on here from Hong Kong. Eric, what kind of boom poles do you use over there?
Oh, you're still muted. Can you unmute?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, there you go.
I use when I start the business, I using the VDB, but now I'm using Ambient and K-Tech.
Okay.
Because K-Tech has the longest boom pole.
Yeah.
So I'm using this.
I was just curious what was used in the East, because we kind of know what's in Europe and what's in the States.
I think in Hong Kong, basically, most movie sound person, they're just using the Ambient and K-Tech, only using these two brands, because I think they have a great customer service in Hong Kong, even in China too.
And what are more common, internally coiled, flow through, or external cabling?
No, they don't using cable. All has to be wireless.
So the transmitter at the end of on the post?
No, some of it, but most times they just put on the mic, just the back of the mic. Yeah.
Okay.
Because they need to move very fast. There's no way to run the cable. No way.
Right. It's one of the things.
In Hong Kong, they have one person they use it, but I think 1 year ago he already changed to using wireless.
Doesn't putting the transmitter right on the mic mess
yes,
with
the transmitter. No, the transmitter on the holder.
Oh, on the holder. Okay.
Yes. I know a couple of years ago, K-Tech, they have the boom pole, they have the adapter you can put on the pole, put the transmitter on the pole, but they don't like to do it because most time it's, I don't know, they just say they just don't like it. It's not confident. I think it's not good to put on the sound card. And sometimes, and also maybe the weather, usually if you're shooting outdoor, maybe the weather condition may be not so good, maybe rain, so very hard to protect the transmitter.
If John Blankenship is still here, yeah, he has a really nice rig on the mic end of the pole that I saw the other day. But
hopefully he'll come back soon.
Yeah.
He's starting is not
here.
Hello.
John, do you have your fishbowl handy?
Yeah, I do. I have to get rid of the virtual background or it won't show through very well. So
That's
let me
true.
do that.
Okay, you work on that.
And yeah, basically Simon Bellamari, and I'm probably mispronouncing his name in Canada, makes this adapter. Now let's see. Let me see if I can bring up my Here it is. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah, but we put it, if you can put it against the white background, we'll be able to see it better because it was.
Well, yeah, the angle is very difficult here.
Yeah.
But anyway, basically this uses the BT200 or whatever, the same battery that the X version of the ZMT transmitter uses, and it just snaps in. So this is an aftermarket device where the battery just snaps in, and it doesn't add hardly any weight. It's
And you
real
get
light.
you get a lot longer battery life, right?
You get about with the Shep 7 hours and 40 minutes. With the CS3E, I can get over 8 hours, well over 8 hours.
Yeah, good.
Because it's only 2.5 milliamp draw. The Shep's is a 4 milliamp draw. So yeah, I get almost 8.5 hours with the CS3E, but it just snaps in. It's very quick to change, adds very little weight, and it's just great. Even when I'm doing run and gun, I definitely like getting rid of the cable. So yeah, and we've got Chris has, what rig does Chris have? Can't tell. So
It's the audio limited and a Minex with an 8050. It's a tiny rig, and it's all on the end of the
Gotcha.
pole.
I
But
see
yeah.
it's supporting the ambient quick release, and the other one supporting the Sound Guys Solutions quick release. Nice.
And yeah, I have ambient because that's what I started with, and now I have probably about 8 of them. So once you invest that much, you keep using it. But yeah, I like this rig a lot, and I designed it so that I put a rubber grommet underneath. It's real hard to tell here, but I put a rubber grommet, and that way I can adjust that quick release just tight enough that I have enough pressure that it stays wherever I put it. So if I put a lightweight mic on there, I need to have the transmitter in down position so it doesn't try to counterbalance it backwards. Because if I put the transmitter like that, the counterbalance is more upside down. And so I can just spin it around real quickly. Whoops, going the wrong way. And there's enough pressure, it just stays wherever I put it. So it makes a terrific little rig. But yeah, changing the battery is real fast. Just like that, you snap it out, you snap a new one in. But yeah, his name's Simon Bellamari, and somebody correct me if you know the pronunciation. He's out of Canada, and he started fabricating these. And you can find him on Facebook. I know there's a listing in the Zaxcom group, because the transmitter is a Zaxcom ZMT Phantom. And yeah, it just makes a nice little rig.
Yeah, I think he's out of Montreal. His company's the Audio Workbench. He does all sorts of connectors and everything.
The mount I was using is just what Audio Limited sells. It's a mounting plate.
So there's probably some people here, a couple of us that had to get a fishbowl together before there were any of these companies building fishbowls. The old, modified painter's pole type thing. I think Witt probably is old enough.
We had aluminum poles. And Jeff, do you remember the frog, the green pole?
Oh yeah, I had one. I loved it.
Yeah,
I still have an aluminum somewhere.
But actually a guy named Les Draver, who went on to do Lightwave windscreen stuff. He was the first person I know who made a professional fishpole with an internal cable and a built-in connector and a bunch of stuff. And I retired the painter's pole that I had built myself when that showed up.
Jeff, wasn't there a LTM?
Yes.
Yeah, that was like one of the first poles I remember. Yeah,
LTMs were aluminum.
Yes,
and they were incredibly light. They had terrible rivet problem. The collars used to have rivets that just worked their way out of existence. So I still have a couple of my old LTM poles.
I have at least 1 or 2 of the LTM mounts.
Oh yeah.
So
Does anybody, Jeff, I'm sure you remember, and John, I'm sure you do too, the big Electro Voice mount?
Oh yeah, I use that a lot.
Suspension. I mean, it was heavy, but it was, back then it was a quiet mount for a ship.
Yep. Oh yeah, when you use that on the Fisher and also on the pole, and Don Sufal built our first rain hat to protect the microphone using that shock mount as sort of the basis for the rain hat.
I don't remember the model number. I'm sure you do, John. Your memory's great, and Jeff, yours is too.
Yeah, but I wouldn't know the number.
I don't remember the model number. But in all of my mounts, like the LTM and so on, that use the little rubber, 4 little rubber O-rings and all of that, or 8 actually, I switched those over to the K-Tech suspenders. And they work the suspenders work in almost any mount that use those things, even in the Rycote mounts, whether the 2, some Rycote had some that had 2, and then they have some that have 4 inside the furry or inside the basket. And I switched all of those over to suspenders, which I really like. But now I've switched more over to the Sinellas, which nothing compares. The Sinellas are overpriced until you use them. Yeah. And then they're not. Yeah. When you find the difference in how much it drops handling noise and everything else, they're worth it.
I find that the Sinella exterior Zeppelins and stuff are superior. Interior wise, they are fantastic until one thing goes wrong and then they don't work. And I find that the variety and price, this is my favorite mount, is the gray on the front and the black on the back, because with a Sinella, you cannot put a ball, a wind protection ball on the mic without changing the mount. It bottoms out the mount. And so with this, I'm able to run it as an indoor mic with this is a 50. With just a regular foamy, but I can put the Leonard ball from Sinella on the end of it with no change in a second.
Don't the Leonard balls work with their own mounts though? I was under the understanding that they
just go on the mic.
Right. But I mean, the mounts don't bottom out, do they, with their ball?
They do on a classic Sinella. Like if you get a Sinella built for an MKH50 and then you put the Leonard ball on it, the mount will bottom out. And it's too much weight for that mount.
Sinella has a video about that, about how they balance out their mounts, their indoor mounts. And once you put something that's not exactly made for it on it, it's a total. But I actually agree with you, John. I think Sinellas are amazing, and I actually less like them on the Zeppelin side because. I feel like they're too bulky and I've had squeaks from them too. So, but
they sound great.
They do sound great. Yes, 100%. 100%.
Martin Schulte, you had some.
Yeah, just Sinella. I'm a big fan of them. I started with the 062 and I have 2 062, and then the Cozy came out, and I still am a big fan. Like from the XS with the CMC1, and that's like really tiny documentary in and out, running outside winds until like 4, 5 maybe. And I recently picked up the Pianissimo because the piano, the first one, that's too big for me. But the Pianissimo on my 4017B, I like how it sounds. But it's ugly now because the hairs are all shitty. And I asked Philippe, how is that all the hairs are shitty now? He said, well, basically it's better sounding that way. That we changed the fur outside to have it. It sounds better, but it looks worse.
John, you have the big one there, the piano instead of the pianissimo?
That's the piano, and it fits either the C-Mid or the CS3E. And really, it's not much longer than the equivalent Rycote, but it doesn't fit in the same cases because it's a little bigger around in the front.
The pianissimo in its clear plastic case, once you put it in this thing, you can like throw it around. It's brilliant. I love that about the pianissimo.
Is that a Sinella product? Is that a Sinella product?
Yeah. It's the baby brother of the piano. It's just a smaller version. It's hard to see scale because we both look like we're just holding a big black Zeppelin.
Yeah, exactly.
Monster windscreen.
Yep.
Oh, that's a nice little furry.
Cute.
Aren't they a pain in the ass to change mics to get into? That's what I've always heard, but
yeah, they're not.
No.
Well,
maybe the older ones.
Yeah, it depends on which one. The piano's not bad at all.
Okay.
The Pianismo is faster than a Rycote. I would bet money on it.
That's the furry one that comes at the back. Is that the one you're talking about?
No, that's Cozy.
Oh.
That's a Cozy. Ah, yeah, that's a Cozy. I'm thinking of. Yeah, yeah.
But the Cozy is meant for is an in-between product. It's meant for inside and out. It's like a balance thing between inside and outside, as far as I understand. And they
You literally
say,
just pull it off, and then you're free.
yeah.
Oh, nice.
This one's what? Isn't it? This the piano, isn't it, Jeff?
Yes.
Yeah, because I got this from Jeff. So I heard a rumor he retired. So,
And
but basically,
it's not that easy to change the mic out. I mean, it's easy, I guess, but I had enough microphones that I would always have one always built up.
Yeah, I normally keep them built up, but even changing it out's not that big a deal. I mean, there's only 4 points where it flips together. So I do it so rarely, it's not a big deal. And putting the cover on is real easy. You just stretch this cover over. So
it seems like mics, mic mounts, and wind protection could be a whole chat.
Oh, yeah.
So,
until you use Sonellas, and then you just decide which one.
it's funny. I have Sonellas. I love them, but I still own my K-Tex that I started out with because those were really good workhorse mounts when I was booming. I didn't need to buy really sensitive Sonella type gear until I was not the one booming, and now I have other now I'm just like, well, that's more handling noise than I can live with. So
I own a ton of Rycote gear. I own all different sizes and everything, and occasionally they still get used, but for the biggest part of my work for exteriors, I'll be using the piano.
For sure.
I'll tell you, Chris Harris, I've never seen that mixing two different suspensions on the mount as you showed. That's really interesting. That's an interesting
the thing for
idea.
me, the Rycote indoor mounts are more versatile. They're cheaper, so I have one for every mic I have, and they're tougher.
I had a bunch of them. I used them a lot. Yeah.
The big thing for me is just that versatility of being able to not have to change the weighting or specificity. So, I could have a mic per mount per mic with the pianist or with the Sonella, which I would actually need to even succeed. Whereas with this, I have a mic mount per mic, and all of it costs me the same as one Sonella. And my boom ops prefer them, and you can't even get the individual gray lyres anymore. So this is like a prize division.
Yeah, I don't have too many mixed lyres, but I have several of them. I have at least a half dozen or 8 of those. I'm talking through one right now, even this mic up here. But I liked them fairly well, but also my go-to still was often using the suspenders on a traditional mount, and I liked those. But for most of the stuff I do now, if I can use a Sonella, then it makes me very happy.
If there's wind protection involved, Sonella beats everything hand down. As far as the mounting, I think it's a choice, but I think the wind protection is so transparent you don't hear it. Going back to a Rycote is like, damn, where'd my highs go?
Well, this is the Sonella designed for the Sheps, and I have a foam ball under there, and then I added a furry that I had for something else. And it actually works very well, even though it's not totally balanced the way Sonella balanced it. It still works better than anything else.
Sorry guys, I gotta run. So Sabi, you're the host. I think when I leave though, the live stream will end. So if it does, thank you everybody in the live stream for joining us. But I've got a 12:15 that I'm already late for. So good to see everybody. Thank you for coming. And I will see you guys later. Please continue on. And Sabi,
Thanks, Chris.
I wanted to ask if anybody still has in their kit. I mean, we still use them, but originally it was called the McDonald mount, and we called it the juice can mount. Now it's the PSC mount.
Absolutely, that was our main.
They'll have a couple.
That's the round thing, right? With the
and he redid it
elastic
recently
band.
with some better elastic and a slightly modified design, so it's even better than the old school one.
That's one of them that I always use suspenders with, the K-Tex suspenders.
Yeah.
I still have
a couple of those and a couple of those AT is it 4015 mounts as well.
Don and I worked with Randy when he was developing that, and the first thing that we did once we got it is replaced the O-rings that he had supplied with it with rubber bands. I know that Randy was always very upset about that, but it worked better. Over the years, they changed the formulation on their rubbers. So
this is the true thing that sold me on the Leonard balls, is that when you needed to go to a fast, or you needed to make a fast swing inside, the indoor foamy would not serve the purpose. But as soon as you put a Rycote Softy or something else, all of a sudden it doesn't sound like a naked mic, or you lose all your highs and whatever. So this, without the fur that goes on it, the Leo ball, is all of a sudden it's like you can whip pan everywhere you want. You get no noise, and it still sounds just like your mic should.
Yep, that's it. There's another testimonial for Sonella.
Yeah, that's on my to buy list and has been.
I thought I gave you one of those, John.
A Leonard ball?
Yeah.
I didn't know you had any, or I would have talked you out of one.
Oh yeah.
Do you still have one?
you might be getting something in the mail.
Oh my.
I'll have to look and see. I might have given it to somebody else.
That's the one that is made for the Sheps.
Yep.
Yes. And
They make them for both. It's just the millimeters. So it works for a lot of mics, which is nice. Ironically, all the mics are 2 sizes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chris. I'm looking at Martin, and he's showing an original Sheps windscreen.
Oh yeah, I have the
lightweight Sheps ball.
The silk ball. Yeah, I used to. Yeah. We built some of our custom windscreens using that silk ball.
Those things are so delicate, though. The little plastic breaks so easily in those.
They used to make their own Zeppelin too, that was made out of silk and stuff and folded up, right? And I think, or maybe that was Sonella early on. I don't know, but
no,
Shirley had some of those.
That was it Ambient that made that?
No, it was DPA.
DPA made that? Yeah, I know it was another manufacturer.
God, they were delicate, but they were light.
Yeah, and
I bought this in 2008. I've been careful, but
you're very careful. Yeah. My compliments.
We used to get about 2 movies out of the windscreens that Don would build. Sometimes maybe 3 movies, but they'd have to redo them all.
All right, I think we're gonna wrap it up, guys. It's almost 12:30. Thank you so much again for coming by. It was awesome talking about microphones. We always can talk about microphones, right? All day long. And shock mounts. We didn't even get into shock mounts that much yet, and more wind protection. But anyway, thank you so much, guys, for coming. See you guys in about a week, and in LA and anywhere in Arizona and nearby states. Stay cool. It's going to be pretty hot over the weekend.
Thanks, Sabi.
Thanks, guys.
Everybody have a great weekend. Thanks.
See you guys later.
Everybody have a good weekend.
See you guys.
Thank you.